He ran marathons, completed 7 of them over 12 years, including Boston twice. His resting heart rate was in the low 50s. His body fat percentage hovered around 12%. He ate salmon twice a week, avoided processed food, never smoked, drank only occasionally at social events. His doctor told him at every annual checkup that he was in excellent health, that his blood work looked great, that he should keep doing whatever he was doing. He was 53 years old and felt 35. On a Tuesday morning in October, he went for his usual run along the river trail near his home. 3 miles in, he felt something strange in his chest, a tightness he'd never experienced before. He slowed to a walk, assuming it was nothing, maybe indigestion from the coffee he drank too quickly before leaving. The sensation intensified. His left arm began to ache. He sat down on a bench, confused, because this was not supposed to happen to someone like him. He was healthy, he was fit, he did everything right. 20 minutes later, paramedics found him unresponsive. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. The autopsy revealed severe coronary artery disease, including a 90% blockage in his left anterior descending artery, the vessel cardiologists call the widowmaker. His wife, still in shock weeks later, kept asking the same question. How could this happen to someone who took such good care of himself? How could there be no warning? How could he be running marathons with arteries that were almost completely closed? This is the story that haunts cardiologists and that the general public does not understand. Being healthy is not the same as being safe. Looking fit does not mean your arteries are clear. Feeling great does not mean disease is absent. The human body has a remarkable and terrifying ability to compensate for damage, to adapt to obstruction, to function normally until the moment it suddenly cannot. And that moment, when it comes, is often fatal. I want to explain what is actually happening inside the cardiovascular system that allows this paradox to exist. Because once you understand the mechanisms, you will understand why fitness alone does not protect you, why symptoms are unreliable, and why the only real protection comes from knowledge and testing that most people never pursue. Let me start with how blood reaches your heart muscle, because this anatomy is essential for understanding everything that follows. Your heart is a pump, and like any pump, it requires energy to operate. That energy comes from oxygen delivered by blood. The blood that fills the chambers of your heart and gets pumped out to your body does not feed the heart muscle itself. The heart muscle is fed by its own dedicated blood supply, a network of arteries that wrap around the outside of the heart like a crown. These are called the coronary arteries, and they are the most important blood vessels in your body. The coronary arteries branch from the aorta, the main artery leaving your heart, and divide into smaller and smaller vessels that penetrate into the heart muscle. Think of them like the root system of a tree, with major trunks splitting into progressively finer branches that reach every part of the tissue. The left main coronary artery divides into 2 major branches, the left anterior descending artery, which supplies the front and much of the left side of the heart, and the circumflex artery, which supplies the back and side. The right coronary artery supplies the bottom and back portions of the heart, and also feeds the electrical system that controls heart rhythm. When these arteries are open and healthy, blood flows freely, delivering oxygen to every cell of the heart muscle. When they become narrowed or blocked, the heart muscle downstream from the obstruction is starved. If the blockage is severe and sudden, that muscle dies. This is a heart attack. The location of a blockage determines its severity. A blockage in a small branch vessel might damage a limited area. A blockage in the left anterior descending artery, which feeds the largest portion of heart muscle, can be immediately catastrophic. This is why it earned its grim nickname. When the widowmaker closes suddenly, the heart often cannot survive. Now let me explain how these arteries become blocked in the first place, because the process is both slower and more insidious than most people imagine. The inner lining of your arteries, called the endothelium, is a single layer of cells that serves as a barrier between your blood and the artery wall beneath. This lining is delicate. It can be damaged by various forces: high blood pressure that pounds against it with every heartbeat, elevated blood sugar that chemically irritates it, toxins from cigarette smoke that inflame it, chronic stress that bathes it in hormones it was not designed to handle continuously. When the endothelium is damaged, the artery responds by initiating a repair process. Unfortunately, this repair process is imperfect and can itself create problems. LDL cholesterol, the particles that carry cholesterol through your blood, can penetrate the damaged endothelium and become trapped in the artery wall. Once trapped, these particles oxidize and become inflammatory. your immune system recognizes them as foreign and sends white blood cells to consume them. These white blood cells, engorged with oxidized cholesterol, become foam cells, and foam cells accumulate to form the beginning of atherosclerotic plaque. Over years and decades, this plaque grows. More cholesterol deposits, more immune cells arrive. A fibrous cap forms over the deposit, walling it off from the blood flowing past. Calcium accumulates in the older, more stable portions of the plaque, hardening them. The artery wall thickens. The space available for blood flow gradually narrows. This process begins in childhood for many people. Autopsy studies of young people who died from accidents have found early fatty streaks in their arteries, the precursors to full atherosclerotic plaques. By middle age, significant disease is present in a large percentage of the population. The process is silent, invisible, producing no symptoms whatsoever while it progresses. Here is where the body's adaptability becomes a liability. As plaque grows and begins to protrude into the artery does not simply accept the narrowing, it remodels. The artery wall stretches outward, expanding to accommodate the growing plaque while maintaining the inner channel's diameter. This is called positive remodeling, and it sounds like a good thing. The artery is preserving blood flow despite the presence of disease, but positive remodeling hides the danger. Because blood flow is maintained, there are no symptoms. The person feels nothing. Their exercise tolerance remains normal. They can run marathons, climb mountains, pass stress tests. The plaque grows and grows, and the artery stretches and stretches, and at no point does the person have any indication that disease is present. They believe they're healthy because they feel healthy. They trust their body to warn them if something is wrong. Their body does not warn them because the outward expansion has prevented any functional impairment. This is the biggest myth about heart disease, the belief that you will feel it coming. People imagine that blocked arteries cause chest pain early, that there will be warning signs, that gradual symptoms will prompt them to seek help before anything catastrophic happens. This assumption is dangerously wrong. The architecture of disease permits it to grow silently for decades. By the time symptoms appear, if they appear at all, the disease is often advanced. The threshold at which symptoms typically emerge is around 70% blockage. Below this level, blood flow at rest and during moderate activity is usually adequate. The person experiences nothing unusual. Above 70% during exertion, the narrowed artery cannot deliver enough blood to meet the heart's increased oxygen demand. This produces chest tightness or pressure, what cardiologists call stable angina. It is a warning light, an indication that flow is compromised and evaluation is needed. But stable angina is not what kills most people. Most fatal heart attacks occur when blockages are less than 70%. Blockages that never produce symptoms, blockages that would not have been detected on a standard stress test. The heart attack does not happen because the blockage finally became severe enough to cut off flow. It happens because the plaque ruptured. Plaque rupture is the true mechanism of sudden cardiac death, and understanding it changes everything about how you should think about heart disease risk. Not all plaques are the same. Some are old and stable, heavily calcified, covered by thick fibrous caps. These plaques narrow arteries but rarely cause acute events. Other plaques are younger and unstable, soft and lipid-rich, covered by thin fibrous caps that can tear. These are the dangerous ones. They may not significantly narrow the artery. They may be invisible to conventional testing, but they are time bombs. When an unstable plaque ruptures, its fatty contents are exposed to the blood flowing past. The body interprets this exposure as an injury and initiates clotting. Platelets aggregate at the rupture site. A blood clot forms rapidly, growing until it completely blocks the artery. What was 50% blockage one moment becomes 100% blockage the next. Blood flow stops entirely. The heart muscle downstream begins to die. This is why heart attacks are often sudden. They are not the end point of gradual narrowing. They are the consequence of abrupt clot formation at a site of plaque rupture. A person with moderate disease that never caused symptoms can experience sudden, complete blockage without warning. Their first symptom is the heart attack itself. For many, that first symptom is also their last. There are two primary types of heart attacks, distinguished by their underlying mechanism. The first type, and the most common, involves this process I just described: plaque rupture followed by clot formation, complete arterial occlusion, and tissue death. This is what cardiologists call a type 1 heart attack. It can happen at any time, during sleep, during rest, during routine activity. It does not require exertion to trigger it, though exertion can sometimes be the precipitating factor. The second type involves a different mechanism: supply-demand mismatch. In this scenario, the arteries may be partially blocked but still capable of meeting normal oxygen demands. During extreme exertion, however, the heart's oxygen requirements increase dramatically. If the narrowed arteries cannot deliver enough blood to meet this increased demand, the heart muscle becomes ischemic. It suffers from inadequate oxygen even though the artery is not completely blocked. This second type is particularly relevant for endurance athletes, for people who push their cardiovascular systems to extremes. They may have moderate disease that produces no symptoms during normal life, but becomes critical during maximum effort. Their fitness allows them to reach exercise intensities that exceed what their compromised arteries can support. Paradoxically, their high level of conditioning enables them to enter a danger zone that less fit individuals could never reach. This explains some of the tragic stories of athletes collapsing during competition. They were fit enough to push their hearts to extraordinary workloads. They were not healthy enough in their arteries to sustain those workloads. The mismatch between their conditioning and their coronary disease created a lethal combination. Electrical problems in the heart compound these risks. The heart's rhythm is controlled by an electrical system that coordinates the contraction of its chambers. When this system malfunctions, the consequences can be severe. Atrial fibrillation, one of the most common rhythm disturbances, causes the upper chambers of the heart to quiver chaotically rather than contracting effectively. This reduces the efficiency of blood filling, increases the heart rate, and decreases the oxygen delivery to the heart muscle itself. In someone with underlying coronary disease, atrial fibrillation creates a perfect storm. The heart is working harder because of the rapid, inefficient rhythm. It is receiving less oxygen because filling is impaired, and the arteries supplying it are already compromised by plaque. The combination can tip the balance toward ischemia and infarction, even without any change in the degree of arterial blockage. There is a protective mechanism that sometimes develops in people with slowly progressive coronary disease. The heart has the ability to grow collateral vessels, tiny new blood vessels that create alternative pathways for blood to reach muscle that might otherwise be cut off. This collateral circulation is like a detour system that develops over time in response to gradual arterial narrowing. Older individuals often have more developed collateral networks because they have had more time for these vessels to grow. When a major artery suddenly blocks in someone with extensive collaterals, some blood can still reach the threatened muscle through these alternate routes. The damage is reduced. Survival is more likely. Younger people typically have less collateral development because their disease, if present, has not existed long enough for the detour system to form. When a sudden blockage occurs, there is no escape route. The muscle downstream is entirely dependent on the blocked artery and dies rapidly. Exercise influences collateral development in ways that provide some protection. Regular physical activity, particularly the combination of steady moderate effort and occasional high-intensity intervals, stimulates the growth of new blood vessels. Athletes often have more robust collateral networks than sedentary individuals. This does not make them immune to heart attacks, but it may improve their survival if one occurs. This is one of the many benefits of exercise, but it must be understood correctly. Exercise builds collateral vessels. Exercise improves cardiovascular efficiency. Exercise reduces many risk factors for heart disease. Exercise does not prevent plaque formation in someone with risk factors driving that process. Exercise does not stabilize vulnerable plaques. Exercise does not eliminate the possibility of rupture and sudden clot formation. Fitness helps survival. Fitness alone does not guarantee prevention. When a heart attack does occur, time becomes the critical variable. From the moment blood flow stops, the heart muscle begins to suffer. The cells deprived of oxygen shift to anaerobic metabolism, which cannot sustain them for long. Within 20 minutes, permanent damage begins. By 90 minutes, significant portions of the affected muscle have died and will be replaced by scar tissue. Scar tissue does not contract. It cannot pump blood. Each minute of delay means more muscle lost and worse outcomes for the survivor. This is why emergency medicine emphasizes door-to-balloon time, the interval between a heart attack patient arriving at the hospital and having their blocked artery opened. Every minute counts. Early action saves muscle, preserves function, improves survival. Late action, even if ultimately successful in opening the artery, may leave the patient with a weakened heart that will limit them for the rest of their life. The symptoms that prompt people to seek help vary significantly between men and women, a difference that contributes to delayed treatment and worse outcomes for women. Men typically experience the classic presentation: crushing chest pressure, pain radiating to the left arm or jaw, sweating, a sense that something is terribly wrong. This is the Hollywood heart attack, dramatic and unmistakable. Men who experience these symptoms generally recognize them as serious and seek help quickly. Women often present differently. They may experience fatigue that seems out of proportion to activity, shortness of breath without chest pain, discomfort that resembles acid reflux or indigestion, pain in the back or neck rather than the chest, a vague sense of unwellness without specific localizing symptoms. These presentations are easily dismissed, attributed to stress or poor sleep or normal aging. Women may delay seeking care because they do not recognize that they are having a heart attack. By the time they reach the hospital, more time has passed and more damage has occurred. When a patient does reach the hospital during an active heart attack, the goal is to open the blocked artery as quickly as possible. This is typically accomplished through a procedure called percutaneous coronary intervention, where a catheter is threaded through an artery in the wrist or groin, guided to the heart, and positioned at the site of blockage. A balloon at the catheter's tip is inflated, compressing the clot and plaque against the artery wall. A metal scaffold called a stent is deployed to hold the artery open. Blood flow is restored. The dying muscle receives oxygen again. This intervention saves lives daily in hospitals around the world. But it is rescue, not prevention. It is the emergency response after catastrophe has already begun. The better approach, obviously, is to prevent the catastrophe from occurring in the first place. And this is where the conventional approach to heart disease falls dangerously short. Standard blood tests are what most people rely on to assess their cardiovascular risk. They check their cholesterol numbers, their blood sugar, their inflammatory markers. They receive reassurance or concern based on these values. But blood tests measure ingredients in the blood. They do not measure disease in the arteries. A person can have normal cholesterol and extensive plaque. A person can have abnormal cholesterol and clean arteries. The blood is not the same as the vessel wall, and what happens in the vessel wall is what kills people. This is why some people with perfect lab work drop dead of heart attacks, while others with terrible numbers live long lives. The lab work indicates risk factors that influence disease development, but it does not show whether disease has actually developed. It is like checking the ingredients in a kitchen without looking to see if a fire has started. The ingredients matter, but if the house is already burning, knowing about the ingredients does not tell you what you need to know. Modern imaging has changed what is possible. We now have tools that can directly visualize disease in the coronary arteries, that can show us what is happening in the vessel wall rather than just in the blood. The coronary artery calcium score is one such tool. This is a CT scan that detects calcified plaque in the coronary arteries without using contrast dye. Calcium in the arteries indicates atherosclerotic disease. A score of 0 means no calcified plaque was detected, which indicates low risk. A score in the hundreds or above 400 indicates extensive disease and high risk. This test is quick, relatively inexpensive, involves minimal radiation, and provides information that blood tests cannot. But the calcium score has limitations. It detects hardened calcified plaque, the older, more stable variety. It does not detect soft plaque, the younger, lipid-rich deposits that are actually more dangerous because they are prone to rupture. A person with a low calcium score might still have significant soft plaque that the test does not see. This is where CT angiography becomes valuable. This more detailed scan uses contrast dye to visualize the coronary arteries directly, showing both the degree of narrowing and the characteristics of the plaque present. It can identify soft plaque deposits that would be invisible on a calcium score. It can reveal vulnerable plaques that pose imminent risk, despite not significantly narrowing the artery. It is the closest thing we have to seeing inside your coronary arteries without actually performing an invasive procedure. These imaging tools transform cardiovascular risk assessment from guessing to knowing. A person who feels healthy and has normal blood work, but extensive plaque on imaging needs aggressive intervention. A person who has risk factors, but clean arteries on imaging may need less aggressive treatment than their lab work would suggest. The imaging shows reality. Everything else is inference. The tragedy is that most people never undergo this imaging. They trust their feelings, their fitness, their blood work. They assume that absence of symptoms means absence of disease. They discover their error only when disease announces itself in the most dramatic possible way, through heart attack, cardiac arrest, or sudden death. Prevention still matters, of course. Controlling blood pressure reduces the mechanical stress that damages the arterial lining. Managing blood sugar prevents the chemical irritation that promotes plaque formation. Avoiding smoking eliminates a major inflammatory insult to the vasculature. Reducing chronic stress decreases the hormonal burden that accelerates disease. Maintaining physical activity supports collateral development and overall cardiovascular efficiency. These interventions reduce the rate at which disease develops and progresses, but prevention without measurement is flying blind. You can do everything right and still have disease. You can do many things wrong and still have clean arteries. The only way to know your actual status is to look. The only way to look is through imaging that directly visualizes the coronary arteries. The central message here is uncomfortable but essential. Ignorance kills. Most heart attacks that strike apparently healthy people happen because those people did not know they had disease. They did not test. They trusted their appearance, their fitness, their feelings. They assumed they would receive warning before anything serious occurred. They were wrong. The body's ability to hide cardiovascular disease is remarkable and deadly. The compensation mechanisms that maintain function despite progressive narrowing work until they suddenly fail. The plaques that grow silently for decades can rupture without warning. The first symptom can be the last symptom. Fitness provides real benefits. It builds collaterals. It improves efficiency. It enhances survival if a heart attack occurs. But fitness is not immunity. Fitness does not prevent plaque formation in someone with ongoing risk factors. Fitness does not stabilize vulnerable plaques. Fitness does not guarantee that your coronary arteries are clear. Knowledge is protection. Knowing that disease can exist without symptoms changes how you approach screening. Knowing that blood tests are insufficient prompts you to seek imaging. Knowing that time is muscle during a heart attack ensures you do not delay seeking care for unusual symptoms. Knowing that men and women present differently helps you recognize signs you might otherwise dismiss. The man who ran marathons and died on the trail could have been saved, not by running more miles or eating more salmon, but by obtaining a CT angiogram that would have revealed his severe disease years before it killed him. He would have been shocked by the finding. He would have required aggressive intervention, but he would be alive. His story repeats itself every day, in gyms and on trails and at finish lines, wherever fit people who do not know they are sick push their hearts past the limits their diseased arteries can support. They are not rare outliers. They are a significant portion of cardiovascular deaths. You do not have to be one of them. You can choose to know. You can request imaging that reveals your actual coronary anatomy. You can move from assumption to knowledge, from hope to certainty, from the dangerous belief that feeling healthy means being safe to the accurate understanding that only testing shows the truth. Fitness is not protection. Knowledge is protection. Feeling good is not safety. Imaging is safety. The conventional approach of blood tests and symptom monitoring leaves you vulnerable to the silent disease that kills without warning. Demand more. Ask your doctor about coronary calcium scoring. Ask about CT angiography if risk factors are present. Understand that the goal is not to avoid testing out of fear, but to embrace testing out of wisdom. Finding disease early, when intervention can prevent catastrophe, is infinitely preferable to discovering it during a fatal heart attack. The marathon runner did everything right except one thing. He did not look inside his arteries. He trusted his fitness to mean health. His fitness failed him because his disease was present all along, invisible, silent, waiting for the moment when compensation failed and rupture occurred. You have the opportunity to learn from his tragedy. The technology exists to see what he could not see. The knowledge exists to understand what he did not understand. The choice to test, to know, to act on that knowledge is available to you in a way it was not available to previous generations. Being healthy is not enough to stop heart attacks, but knowing your true cardiovascular status and acting on that knowledge can be. The difference between those who survive and those who do not often comes down to whether they knew what was happening inside their arteries before it was too late. Know yours. Test. Because by the time symptoms arrive, you may have already run out of time.